Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to be walking through Activity 5-8, titled Testing Access to a Folder. This is from the MCSE/MCSA Guide to Configuring Advanced Microsoft Windows Server 2012 R2 Services in preparation of Exam 70-412. In my edition of the book, this activity begins halfway down page 191. So a quick recap on the activities leading to this. We've kind of created some dynamic access controls and configured a few users so we can see the granularity that we can apply with these controls. A large portion of it is done here in the Active Directory Administrative Center under our dynamic access control. So first we'll go through these top-down as they're in order here. Yours might be in a different order because you can reorder these. In any case, we have the resource properties, we have confidentiality enabled and department enabled. And you can come in and look at the properties for each of these. So here are all the possible values, and you can add and remove and edit these. So if you have a specific department in your organization that doesn't exist in this list, it's very easy just to add it in. You do the same thing with confidentiality. I went through a whole other video on the confidentiality side, so I'm not going to touch that again in this video. We'll move on to claim types. And so we set up a claim type both by department and by job title. So we'll quickly look at both of those. So our department, the department is an attribute for a user account or a computer account that you can use to grant access to specific resources on your network. So here's our possible values that we created. Accounting and marketing are the only two that I'm worried about right now. And then in the job title, again, it's very similar. The title is an attribute applied for a user or computer, and I'll show that in a moment. And again, this is really integrated with Active Directory specifically. So the two values for title that I've created control options with, the executive and the manager. And we can look at the resource property list. There's not really much we needed to do here. Again, we can come down and make sure that confidentiality is enabled. And again, there's department right there. Chances are if you've enabled them up here, if this will load up for me, there we go, then you're pretty much good there. Alright, once we've done that, we want to make sure that we have something shared. For example, I did the marketing following the book, so this folder, this directory is actually shared on the network, and I've got two files inside it. Again, this is kind of going back over the whole confidentiality, which is a whole separate video I've already created, but we're going to look at the classification here, and we'll see that we have not just a classification, but we have a department now that fits as well. So these are just properties that are part of these files that allow us to control who is able to access the files. So we created a few user accounts. I have an accounting user, and if we open their properties, all we have is the accounting department. So there isn't really anything extra set up for them. It's just a generic account with a login put into the accounting department. So since we have a marketing share, this accounting user shouldn't be able to access anything there, and we'll test that towards the end of the video. In addition to the accounting user, we have a generic marketing user. Again, just a log on. So we have the marketing department, and then they're also a manager. And this is just to show that you can append a title and use the title for additional controls. In this video I don't do anything by the manager title, but this will show that this user is able to access the low confidentiality, or the low classification low files. And the third one will be my executive user with the marketing department again, and the job title executive, which we did set up some controls for to give them a little bit more access and modification rights to files in the share for the marketing department. Okay, so we have a lot of that stuff set up, and then there's a couple group policies that we have to set up as well. The first is for the domain controllers. So we enable the KDC, which allows the server to support claims and these authentication rules. And then we also need to enable it for clients so that they know to try to access these resources, or these shares, using the claims. So the client will provide the claim, and the domain controller will validate it in order to grant access based on the rules that you create, whether they can read only, or if they can read and write, modify, delete, create new stuff. There's a whole slew of controls, and these kind of go hand in hand and complement NTFS permissions. So it's not one or the other, they both work together to give you a lot more granular controls over specific resources on the network and specific users. Okay, so we have all of that configured. And we have our client machine here. I kind of worked a little bit ahead of the book in this. If you're following along, then this machine should already be joined to the domain. So if yours is not, join it to the domain now, so you can use those domain users to log in. You can do that by right-clicking on the Start menu on Windows 8, or the Start button down here, and going to System. Hit this Change Settings option here. You'll need to give domain credentials if you're already on the domain. If you're not on the domain, it'll be the local administrator credentials. And then you will simply change it from a work group to a domain, type in the domain, and then give the domain credentials to join. It'll prompt a reboot, and then you're ready to log in as a domain user. So once you've gone through that, log in as one of our test users. I'm logged in currently as the Accounting 1 user, that first generic user that I created and we kind of looked at. And so one thing we want to do is we kind of want to see what claims they have. So we're going to give the command who am I with no spaces, and we'll have a space next / claims. And so we're seeing unknown. Claim here that the department is accounting. I may not have set up the access controls for accounting because I wasn't too worried about it, since we're really focusing on marketing. The main thing is that when we try to access that share, this user should not have any access. It's an accounting user, they shouldn't be able to get into the marketing resources. So we would expect to see this, and we would hope to see this. Alright, so we want to go ahead and test our other users. So we're going to go ahead and log in next as a marketing user, as the marketing manager. And then I'm going to go ahead and run that command again, the who am I claims, and we'll see both claims that are applying to this user, both the department as marketing and the job title as manager, because we set both department and job title up for our controls. So we see both of those are good and recognized, and then we want to go ahead and access the server again. We should be able to get into the marketing folder, but because we don't have the executive title, then we'll only be able to see the low classification files. We'll be able to view content inside, but we won't be able to save. It'll look like it'll allow us to save, and as soon as we try, it will tell us that we're denied access for overwriting a file. We can try to change the name and save it again to the same location, and it'll be the same thing. We don't have permissions to save there. The only option we have if we want to make changes to files is to save them locally, and then if we need them to be shared across the network, then we'd need to either ask for permissions to save, or we'd need to send a copy of the file that we've modified to somebody that already has permissions to save there, and to write new data to that share on the network. Alright, so we'll go ahead and close that, so we don't see that high confidential file that we have here. So we can see that that part of our controls is working. I can't even see the stuff that I'm not allowed to access, which is good. So the last one that we need to test is the executive. So we'll go ahead and sign in with that user. So again, executive, our third user. And again, the department here was also marketing, so I should have access to the share. And the title was executive, which should give me modify controls. So we'll go back in here, and now I can also see the classification high. Files, I can't actually come and look at the specific classifications as this user, but I can view it here from my server. And so we have the high confidentiality, and then department is marketing, of course, compared to the low confidentiality value here. And so with the executive now, we can come in and we can add new data and save it, because the executive has rights to modify data on this shared directory on the network. So we can write new files, we can create brand new content, we can go ahead and delete old content. So again, pretty much full control for the executives at this point. Alright, it looks like that covers at least all the basics for the activity. And again, if you were confused at all about the whole classification side of things, I did make a separate video for that, so you might have to go and search for it, but it is there and it'll help set up the classification side. Other than that, as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them for me below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.